This incident happened to me last year on Halloween. My little brother and I were home alone, since our parents had gone out to a Halloween party. They tasked us with handing out candy to the trick-or-treaters. This really bummed my brother and I out because we had made plans to go trick-or-treating with a few friends, but whatever. Our parents told us we were too old to still be trick-or-treating, and that we could instead invite our friends over to the house and just hang out here. Well, my friends declined our invitation to come over because they were still wanting to go trick-or-treating. So eventually and utterly, leaving me home alone with my brother to hand out candy. A lot of people did stop by the house, and by 10 p.m., almost all the candy was gone. My brother and I decided we'd just eat the rest. So we're sitting on the couch, watching a scary movie, stuffing ourselves with candy, and there was a knock at the door. I stormed off the couch, wondering who the hell could be knocking at our door this late at night. I assumed that it was just some late night trick-or-treaters, but even if that was the case, I had turned the porch light off and the Halloween decorations off as well, which is a dead giveaway that we're out of candy or we're not home. So in the moment, we just kind of assumed it was our parents. Being cautious, I looked through the peephole and saw this suspicious man just standing on our front porch. He was wearing a black hoodie with a hood over his head, which made it difficult to see his face. The only detail of his face that I could spot was that he had a beard and dry, crusty lips. There's no way that this guy was a trick-or-treater because he wasn't wearing a costume. He was far too old to be trick-or-treating alone. His hands were stuffed in the front pocket of his hoodie. He also looked really thin. Every single red flag went off in my head about this guy. There's no way in hell I'm opening up the door. Still looking through the peephole, I watch as he knocks on the door again. He seemed desperate for us to open up. He was even shaking. It wasn't cold outside, and definitely not cold enough for someone to be trembling the way he was. He was definitely giving me a bad vibe. I wanted to just get rid of him as soon as possible. "We're out of candy," I shouted to him. I watched as a smile spread across his face, and it wasn't a friendly smile either. "Are you in there alone?" the man asked, almost in a mocking voice. His voice was raspy and dry. "Should I call the police?" my little brother asked me quietly, gripping his cell phone. The man let out a low grumble and said, "Sounds like you're not alone in there." I continued to watch him through the peephole. His hands were still wedged tightly in his pocket, and he was still shaking a bit. I was now wondering if he was armed. I decided to take action and spoke to him in the most intimidating voice I could muster. "Get the fuck away from my house, or I will call the police," I shouted at him. His smile faded, and he bared his teeth. His teeth were piss yellow, and I concluded that he was probably some homeless crackhead. He had a look of fury plastered all over his face, but fortunately, he left without trying to break in. Probably and hopefully because he knew I wasn't messing around with him. I didn't stop watching him through the peephole as I saw him completely off of our property. My brother and I breathed a sigh of relief and just decided not to call the police. We were a bit paranoid after this, however. Watched TV until our parents came home. We didn't tell them about that man, since he hadn't really tried to harm us. But now when I think back on this, I wish we would have called the police because we would have been able to prevent a murder. You see, the next day, we found out that the elderly woman who lived a few houses down from us had been brutally murdered. Her neighbor had found her laying on her front porch, covered in blood. She'd been stabbed multiple times in the chest and neck. My brother and I immediately knew who'd done it, and we told the police what we knew. They couldn't really do much from the information that we'd given them since we hadn't seen many details of that guy's actual face. They went on a hunt for the man, but never caught him, and I continue to blame myself for that poor old lady's murder. I could have prevented it from happening by just calling the police. I think the most disturbing thing of it all is the fact they didn't take anything from the old lady's house. Her house had been left untouched, but he could have gone in and taken what he wanted since her door was wide open. That means he was literally just out to kill. That was his only intention. He didn't want money or jewelry. He only had the urge to murder. Sophomore year of college. The memories. October hits. It's time to get my spooky on and have some fun at parties and dress up. Halloween is absolutely my favorite holiday. About a week before Halloween, one night I just said screw it. I was bored. My Tinder date canceled due to studying for an exam. I was in a pissy mood and I really didn't want to go hang out with friends in their dorms or just get drunk. So I decided to play a little basketball at this park that no one goes to. Basketball really tends to relax me. I just shoot around for about an hour and I knew it would relax me. Then I figured I'd go back to my place and just play some video games. I pull up to this park. As anticipated, not a single car in sight. There's a trail nearby that leads to a mountain. It was a great time to shoot around and just relax. I'm even contemplating putting headphones in, but then I realize as night's approaching, it's best I hear what's going on around me. Sunset hits, and it's a beautiful pink sky from above. Picture perfect. Another 15 minutes pass by, and it's now completely dark. I'll definitely be wrapping up this shoot around very soon. Until I heard a loud piercing scream. Thought it was probably coming from the trail. Then it proceeded with some weird laughs. So I'm like, okay, but spooked. I still don't see a damn thing. So I tell myself 10 more minutes and I'm out of here. Then I notice a car pulls up in the parking lot. The car proceeds to park. I go to the bathroom near the court and I'm telling myself, okay, I'm taking a piss and then I'm leaving. As I'm taking a piss, and I'm not lying or exaggerating here, I hear a whisper from the bathroom stall next to me. I swallow. Shit. It could be a tweaker, a homeless person, or just a troubled individual. As I'm coming out of the bathroom, a car door slams. I'm trying to get my eyes on whoever just got out of the car. I creep behind the small building where the bathrooms are and peek out. I completely gasp and was just in shock. 2 clowns are now walking slowly to the courts and then to the trail nearby. I'm literally thinking maybe I should just follow these 2 clowns, see where they're going so late at night. Then I also tell myself that probably won't be the best idea. I put my backpack on and get ready to walk to my car. I sprint over to my car and hop in, get on my phone and make a phone call, telling my buddies I'll be online in about an hour. I notice someone's now sitting on the bench near the basketball court. I'm thinking it had to be the guy in the bathroom, but whatever, I've had enough. I drive off and get back to my place. And that's really the end of the story. I know it's not exactly what you were expecting and it wasn't as scary as some people might think, but if you remember, this was during that time in 2016 when clown sightings were everywhere, all around the world. It was just a creepy encounter I wanted to share. I'm not sure if anything would have happened had I stuck around. And who knows? Maybe these clown sightings might resurface again.
I don't go on many trips out of town, so this was one of the few times I've had to stay somewhere other than a friend or family's house. The area I needed to stay in was small, and most of the hotels didn't look very nice. But to my surprise, there was a single home listed on Airbnb. It was my first time using the site, but the house looked like a decent place, much better than the hotels. I requested the dates and in a few minutes the place was booked. The following week, I started the drive. When I got to the town, which was about 14 hours from my city, it was well into the night. The town almost looked deserted compared to where I was used to living. All the houses' lights were off, and all the stores were closed. No people or cars were out. Of course, it was the middle of the night, so I didn't expect this small town to be lit up and active at this time, but it was still eerie, considering I hadn't seen it during the day. I only came in with this as the first impression. The street that took me to the Airbnb was dark as well, leading through a winding forested neighborhood until I eventually ended up at the house. It was one of few that had its porch and outdoor lights on, but one window upstairs had a light coming through it as well. I figured the last customer had just made the mistake of leaving it on, so I thought nothing of it and started getting my stuff up to the front door. I got the key code from my email and opened the door, getting inside and locking the door behind me. I quickly put my stuff in the corner of the room, then went upstairs to turn off the light that was left on. It was one of the spare bedrooms, only having a bed and a small dresser in it. I flicked it off, then went to the main bedroom to set up my things. I was only staying for the one night, but I had it booked for 2 because I needed to be there late into the following day. I was up for no more than an hour before finally getting in bed and turning in for the night. I rested my eyes and tried to sleep, but was laying awake for a long time. I sat up quickly, hearing a thud run through the walls of the house. I stared at the door, trying to think what could have been the cause of the sound, but with no ideas coming to mind, I got up to check. I opened the door softly, peering into the upstairs hallway. It was dark and quiet now. No more thuds, only the sounds of the house swaying in the wind. I stepped back and quietly shut the door, but a strange feeling came to me that had me wait as I thought more about the sound I heard. As I stood there, soft creaks started to go along the floorboards from the other room. I listened with my ear against the door as the creaking moved into the hallway and then began making its way toward the door. I was so in shock that I almost didn't realize that it had to be footsteps of someone approaching. My heart started racing as they came right up to the other side of the door. I put my hand tightly on the door handle to keep it from moving, and only a moment later, I felt it pull down. As soon as I resisted it, they eased off. There was a small moment before suddenly the handle was forced down and they slammed into the door. It swung half open before I pressed my body back into it. I only saw half of their face in the doorway, but in their eyes was an anger that I didn't expect to ever see. After a struggle, I somehow managed to push the door back into the latch and lock it. The man on the other side tried to get it back open, but after yelling a few unpleasant words towards me, he ran downstairs and out of the house. I was still catching my breath and my mind was racing, but I gathered myself up and dialed 911. For such a small town, they came shortly after. The owner of the Airbnb continued with the case after I left on the following day, but I wish I had kept up with it. That man seemed so desperate to get into my room and was in some state of rage, like he wanted to hurt me as if I'd done something to him. Everything about it is disturbing, and I don't think I'll ever get it out of my head, but Airbnbs probably won't be something I take part in again for a long time. I work from home for a cybersecurity company, which really isn't as interesting as it might sound. I have to be online overnight from 10 to 6, scrolling through files full of code to see if anything is a possible threat. It's extremely boring, and when paired with the overnight shift, it makes for a struggle every night to stay awake. One night, just a few weeks ago, I was up at 2 a.m. working and feeling the weight of my eyes. I pushed through the sleepiness for a while, checking my phone over and over, hoping the time had somehow skipped forward. At 2:40 though, I took a break and decided to order some food to get myself some fuel for the remaining 3 hours of my shift. I opened up Uber Eats, and my only real option was Taco Bell, so I sent in an order and got up to get something to drink. As I walked through the house with only the hallway light on, I woke up some more and realized it was raining outside. I looked out the front window and was surprised at how hard the rain was coming down, given I had been so oblivious to it while working. My first thought was how I just ordered for delivery, and I felt really bad for basically making someone run through the rain for my own convenience. I checked my phone and saw the order was already received, so I sat on the couch and waited for them to show up. After about 10 minutes, I was notified that they had picked up the order, so I watched the map on Uber Eats as the car made their way across the town and eventually into my neighborhood. Once they were a minute away, I put my phone down and opened up the front door so we could make the exchange as quickly as possible. I stood at the open door, staring at the end of the road where they should have been coming from, but another 5 minutes went by without seeing any cars. I picked up my phone again and checked, but on the map, their car was still in my neighborhood, and when I zoomed in, I realized they were right around the corner, just before the turn onto my street. I looked outside again, but didn't see any lights from their car. My rightful reaction was that they probably had the wrong house, or couldn't see the address numbers through the rain, so I tried calling them. A few rings, then they rejected it. I tried again, but had no luck. Unsure of what exactly was going on, I stayed at the door and waited. I want to say 5 more minutes went by before I tried to contact them again. I called, and this time it rang for a while, but then they answered. I asked where they were and if they needed help finding my house, but as I listened for their response, all I heard from their side was the crackling sound of rain pouring down. After another few seconds, I hung up. Feeling really weird about that call, I checked the map one more time. At first, it hadn't updated, but when it did, it showed them right outside my house. I checked the windows and saw nothing, but knowing they were walking around in the rain like this was giving me a really bad gut feeling. I closed the door and locked it, and I swear I only made it a few steps down the hallway before a loud knock shook the front door. I carefully looked through the peephole. A man in a gray hoodie was pacing around on the porch. His head was on a swivel, like he was checking for any onlookers as he waited anxiously for me to answer.
Uber Eats delivery,
he yelled, but nowhere did I see a bag with my food. I stayed in place, not answering or making any sounds. The man got increasingly more hectic with his movements and called out several more times. Then, he suddenly pressed himself up against the door, blocking my view as I heard a few dull scrapes on the wood, before he quickly ran to the side of my house and disappeared in the rain. I called the cops, but his car was already gone, and from what I was told, he was using a scam account. A couple days went by with nothing else to report on, until I noticed a small scratch on my front door. It was an X, but it didn't look like it was made for me to see. It was more hidden, like a personal indicator for something. It could have just been a fluke to scare me, but I still painted over it to conceal whatever that marking was supposed to mean. That night still leaves me with an uneasy feeling in my gut, especially since he had some sort of sharp object in his hand as he waited for me to open the door. Part of me is still convinced that that won't be my last encounter with him.
Our official merch store is finally here. If you want to support more of our channel, check out our merch shop. The link is in the description down below. See you on the next video.